Very well, and listening to that bio, I think, man, I want to meet this guy. Sounds interesting. Oh,
Did you know you did all that?
else.
Did you know you did all that?
Yeah, I'm aware of it. It all seems to, yeah, you always feel like it's somebody else, but great to virtually meet everybody. And yeah, not my most explosive entrance, but I've become a Zoomer of late, you know, in this recent times. And up here in Scotland, a Zoomer is something completely different. So yeah, it's been no, it's been interesting times we're in.
Excellent. And I just want to just kick off, and obviously we'll introduce Sean a bit later as well. So can you tell us a bit about your career, and as an SAO soldier, what inspires you to go into that path, Colin?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. You were talking about childhoods, and somehow, sometimes for a lot of us, some of the stuff that happens to us during our childhood, we take that with us for the rest of our lives. So whether that's social dynamics, mental resilience, or whatever that thing is, we've always been products of our environment. So we're shaped by everything that's around us, and that may seem obvious, but as we grow up, that's our family unit, our mum and dad, brother and sister. It's people that we're around at school, at workplace, we see on television, read in magazines, and that's what shapes our values and beliefs, and it's the glasses through which we see the world. And for me as a child, I didn't have perspective of what a normal childhood should be. And my childhood was probably quite unique, although not too dissimilar to a lot of people that end up in the infantry, particularly probably in the 80s and early 90s. I was quite badly physically beaten at times, and there was all sorts of forms of abuse going on within my family home. And I always say, when people say, who am I always remember back to this day, I was shut in a room, it was locked from the outside, and I was quite badly beaten. I had a fractured right eye socket, I couldn't see out my right eye. And every time I tried to get up and see outside the window, a guy would come in from the outside and he would do me in again. And this happened for about 3 days. And when I tell people that, they say, well, you're prepared for that in the SAS with standard beating and everything. But I was only 13, 14, and this would build me up for a career in the armed forces and later on the SAS, because from a very early age, I was able to distinguish the similarities between the physical and the mental aspects and how they complement each other, but they're very distinct. So physically, I could be broken down. I'm just like you. You bash me, I'll bleed, my bones will break like anybody else. But mentally, I was the gatekeeper of my emotion. You couldn't make me scared or angry or happy. You know, I held the key that decided whether that happened. And that was one of the key things that would stead me in good steads for later on when I went to join the military and later on special forces.
Wow, incredible! And tell us about that moment when I've seen the videos, and I've done my research on you, and I've seen a lot of stories that you share. But tell the people, obviously the audience that probably haven't seen your background on YouTube and the videos, when you were called into that Seizure moment.
Yeah, so the siege. Well, I'd obviously to get through selection. And Sean's been through the selection process. He'll have a good understanding of some of the things that it takes, but it's more of a mental test than a physical test to get through selection. It's 6 months long. And at the end of it, I always tell everybody, I was never at the front, I was never at the back, I was somewhere in the middle, just trying to survive, get to the next day. And, you're surrounded by good people and you're just trying to be a good team player. And I was fortunate enough at the end. I think there was 196 at the start and 12 at the end, but I still felt I was somewhere in the middle, just trying to get to the next day. And I was literally riding that euphoria of having passed SAS selection. And within about 2 months, I was on this first job. It was this siege, and I was sent on a forward air controllers course, which is, they give you a shot of flying a jet and blowing up targets. And they gave me this pager, shows how long ago it was. And they said, Colin, if your pager goes off, 4 nines, that's a terrorist incident. You've got to respond to it. And so this pager went off. I took it down and I phoned up Exchange and I said, hey guys, it's Colin Maclachlan, the new guy. My pagers just went off. It's 4 nines. and they said, yeah, it's a hijacked jet. It's coming in at Stansted, and you're the closest one. So get there and hold the fort. And I was like, what? Hold the fort? And they're like, yeah, get there and hold the fort. And I was like 24 years old. I was only like 3 months in the job. I was 23 on selection. And sometimes life's like that. It'll just take you and throw you right in at the deep end, sink or swim. So I thought, right, okay. And so I hightail it into Stansted. I've got all my Darth Vader kit and the Range Rover, and I fly in. And the chief super's there at the gate, and he's looking behind me, sort of thing. And he says, "Where's the rest of them?" And I'm like, "They're just coming. I'm the advance party." In the deepest voice I could muster. He says, "Right, okay. Get in the main hangar and give the guys a brief in 10 minutes." I was like, "Yeah, will do." I was thinking, 10 minutes? I'm going to brief them up. I'm 24. I've been here 3 months. And I thought, right, okay. So I go out into this big hangar, massive hangar, 200 people in there, Cobra, intelligence services, firearms, press, all there, 200 people,
Wow.
all sitting looking at me apprehensively. And I thought, there's only two ways this can go. I can either tiptoe out onto this stage and say, look, guys, I don't know if you know, but I'm only 24. I've only been here 3 months. So if you point me in the way of the coffee machine and you guys deal with it, I thought, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to enthuse confidence, let them know the SAS are here and we've got this. So the first thing I did was I put my black kit on, I had my little sort of Darth Vader kit and my respirator and my hand cannon. And I go out onto this stage and there's like 200 of them all there in this aircraft hangar. And I say, right, ladies, gents, let's confirm make and model of this aircraft as it comes in, direct it over the pan, directly over the tunnel so we can get underneath it. Let's disable the wheels and steering. Let's drain all the engine oil and fluid out of there. Let's get eyes and ears onto the plane, decide exactly how many hostages, how many terrorists, what their arms are, any demands, any injuries. Let's keep the press at bay. You all know your jobs. Go, go, go. And everyone went flying out different sides of the hangar. And I was like, guys, when are you coming? And they were like, we'll be there in like 40 minutes. And I just prayed for 40 minutes. Nothing was going to happen. But actually, this went on for 4 days. And like you say, this is the longest UK counter-terrorist siege in history. And a lot of people tell the bombs and bullets story side of things. But I quite like the funny stories because it's funny things that gets us through these grim times like we find ourselves at the minute. And so they said to me, Colin, we need to find a way of getting eyes and ears onto the plane. So what we've got is this phone. We're going to give it to you and you're going to put it on the plane so we can speak to them. And when they lift the handset of the phone, it's going to have a camera on it and we'll see everything on the plane. I was like, okay, James Bond stuff. So I get this phone and it's like something from the First World War. It's like this size with about a kilometre of cable. So I go out to the plane, I chap on the door and the door opens and I put this phone up and they shut the door and it cuts the cable. And I was like, that's not gonna fly. So I go back and I say, that's not gonna work. And they say, okay. They've asked for food on the plane. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put pizzas on there. And then inside the little pizza boxes, they're gonna be little listening devices and we'll hear everything on the plane. I'm like, okay, so I put my Domino's jacket on and I walk out to the plane. I put these pizzas up, door shuts. I must have got about 4 steps and the door opens. All these pizzas come flying out all over the tarmac. Ham and pineapple, they're not gonna eat that. So I'm like, that's just ridiculous. So I go back and I tell them. Anyway, they managed to dial into the cockpit and speak to the pilot and we get updates. And this rumbles on for about 4 days until eventually we managed to go and take down the plane. And it actually happened by surprise, but we went on to we were just about to assault the plane and they must have looked out the windows and they must have just put the ladders down and let everybody go. So we managed to capture all the hostages alive and take the hostage takers as well. But that was my very first Operation Stansted within only a few months of being in the job.
Wow. Talk about being thrown in the deep end.
Yeah, and I guess for a lot of businesses, a lot of individuals, they'll have been there. There'll be points where they've been thrown in at the deep end. And if anything, this recent period, if you'd have said, a year ago that we'd be in this situation, it would have thrown a lot of people off. And it's a good reason why we have a sort of plan A and a plan B and a backup plan. And we always have to have it. And interestingly, whenever there's a counter-terrorist incident with the SAS, we always have an immediate action and a deliberate action. And the deliberate action is the plan. That's what we're going to do at a ground time of our choosing. But we also have to have an immediate action. What happens if they kill the hostages right now? What's our plan? Because those plans are going to be different. And sometimes I think individuals and businesses don't always have a plan B. They don't always have an immediate action. And so what happens if your resources, time, manpower get cut in half now? What's the plan? And sometimes it helps to have that plan already on the drawing board before you go.
Yeah, I was going to say that because obviously in business, you're right. A lot of people don't have that plan. And we always say, we always have a plan B and a plan C, you know, and you've always got to forward think, haven't you? And that's probably one of the biggest lessons I would teach young entrepreneurs is always have your plan B and plan C in place, because you never know what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same with COVID, doesn't it? When that kicked in, you know, straight away we reacted and bang, you know, we went straight online and then converted, and that was a big difference.
So obviously I was reading your bio. I didn't know that about you, about when they put a gun to your head. God, how did that make you feel when you thought, you know, did you think, oh my God, I'm going to die? And what was going through your mind?
Well, hopefully not a bullet, but yeah, it's at that stage, the sort of lead up to that was I was put into Iraq looking after MI6, and whenever as soon as I got into the country, the sort of rules of the game changed, and it was deemed too dangerous for MI6 to leave the palace. And in fact, what they said was, you're going to have to do their job. And I took over from a 6-man team, and there was only 3 of us. And eventually, I got a 4th guy in, and we were doing a lot of the surveillance, running agents, breaking down terrorist cells within the city ourselves. But there was a lot of little things that were going wrong. And if I can give any piece of advice, if there's lots of little things going wrong, take care of them, because they add up to one big thing. And so for us, things like the cars would break down because we relied on low profile, old vehicles. Radios didn't work outside the city centre. We didn't have a quick reaction force coming, didn't have the right armour and weapons. Lots of little things, but if they all go wrong at the same time, it can be one big problem. So I was feeding this up to the command, and nothing was really coming back. And on the day in question, our car broke down. And so we'd taken these 2 MI6 guys, dropped them off at the Kuwaiti border, and me and myself and one other were driving back. And our car broke down. So I tried to fix it, tried to bump it, raise people on the sat phone. I was getting nothing. So eventually I did what any rational human being would do, and I hijacked a taxi. And as the taxi come along, I've got my M4, and I try and bribe him. I try and show him money. And even he won't take my Scottish sterling. I was like, it's sterling, take that to any bank. Anyway, he's not interested. I give him US dollars. He's a bit more forthcoming. And he jumps in the back seat, put our kit in, and we hightail it into Basra. And I think, that's it, home for tea and medals. And it didn't really work out that way. As we came into the main checkpoint in Basra, we got front and tailed, and they were trying to get us out the car. And the guy beside me, newest guy in the regiment, he looks at me, eyes like saucers, and he's like, Colin, this isn't good, is it? And I remembered that guy. That guy was me back at Stansted, the new guy that was just thrown right into the deep end. So I said, look, Lee, we're the SAS. Look at the firepower we've got in the back seat. Many times have we had to debus, pin the enemy with fire, and just pepper pot up the river. I said, that's what we're going to do. We'll get to Pink 19, and you know where the palace is. And he looked at me, and he was like, all right. And he believed me. And inside, I was thinking, we're doomed. I couldn't tell him that. I had to have him on board, because if we had any chance of getting out there, everyone had to believe. Everybody had to have faith we're going to get out of it. So they shoot around, it hits the top of the car, and we decide we're going to debus. We debus, we've pinned the enemy with fire. I get round behind the engine block, and I realise we're not going to make it. There's heavy fire coming. We're not going to make it to the river. One of us is going to get clipped. So now I'm on plan C. So now I think, right, okay, I'm going to delay tactics here. I'm going to bunker down here, because I'm on a main arterial highway, and a US or UK call sign will come by any moment. So we're bunkering down there. They drag us into this outbuilding at the side of the checkpoint, and they start trying to strip us. And every time they try and take something, my weapon or my body armor, I put up a sort of fight until they fire a shot or they butt stroke one of us, and then I just give them it. Until eventually we're stripped naked, blindfolded and handcuffed in 2 separate rooms. And I can hear the same going on to Lee next door. So I'm shouting out to him, just saying, bunker down here, we're at a main checkpoint, you know, try and keep calm. And then bizarrely, you talk about that moment when the muzzle was in the back of my head and they were like pressing the trigger, and it was just the firing pin that was going off. There was no, they either hadn't cocked it, or it was like a mental thing or whatever. That wasn't actually the scariest part, believe it or not. The scariest part was when they started fighting between themselves, because when there was a sense of order and somebody was in charge, I felt safer. But when they started fighting and it was almost like mob mentality and stuff, I felt like at any moment I could be, you know, ripped arm from limb. And so I think there's something about that element of order. We like order. We like somebody in charge. As soon as we lose control, we have this sense of fear. And we've had that over the sort of recent period, where when we feel there's no control and order, somebody's in charge taking care of things, has our back, there's that sense of vulnerability. And for me, that was exactly the point where I felt the most vulnerable, was when they were all like arguing between themselves. Anyway, eventually this guy comes in. He must have been in charge. He was the fattest with the biggest moustache. And he says, I'm the head of police, and it was mistaken identity. We thought you were Egyptian terrorists. Must have been the nose or something. No, we're not Egyptian terrorists. He said, okay, so we're going to take you back to the palace and we'll give you your kit. But they don't fully clothe us, and they don't give us all our kit back. They sort of just partially clothe us. And there's a big row, there's about 7 or 8 police SUVs outside, and they put us in them and we hightail it towards the palace. But before we get to the palace, instead of going right into the palace, we go left into the main police station. But as soon as they take us out, I shout to Lee, we're at the police station, because I know he knows where the palace is in relation to the police station. And they take us upstairs into this big room, and it's all laid out. They've got video cameras, they've got a table with all their kit on it, and they've got a table with lots of knives on it, and they've got a load of pile of orange boiler suits. And I thought, that's not ideal. I don't suit orange. So I tried to tell them. They don't like my British sense of humour, so they give me a clap for my troubles. And they drag me downstairs into this big courtyard, and they've got a load of armoured vehicles there. So they drag me down, there's all these vehicles, and there's a white car, 4-door saloon, sitting in the middle with the engine running, doors open, and they're trying to get me in it. And as I bend down to look inside, I see that the driver's got a balaclava on, and the guy in the passenger seat, he's got an AK-47 across his lap, and he's got a balaclava on. And in the back seat, there's a guy with a shortened version, the airborne AK-47, and he's holding a pistol, and he's got a balaclava on. And even I was thinking, this isn't great. How do you drive with a balaclava on? Anyway, they don't like my sense of humour. They're trying to get me in the back of the car. I'm kicking off like a man possessed. I'm dishing out headbutts and Chinese burns in all directions, and they're not getting me in the back of the car. And they drag me back up the stairs, and as luck would have it, that's what saved my life, because up in the air, about 20,000 feet, somebody was doing a video serial of something completely different. And they just happened to see this commotion going on. Thousands of people outside the police station, things on fire. And they saw me in there, this white pasty guy, they're trying to get in the back of a car. And they just fed it back to the MOD. And the MOD at the time said it was too dangerous to come in and get us. And luckily for us, Special Forces countermined that. And so I think they put a tank in through the wall and got us out of there. So I got rescued and taken back to the palace. And then the very next day I was moved up to Baghdad, and I was on an exchange program with Delta Force. But yeah, they were exciting times. Blimey,
you know, it's like, it obviously wasn't your time, Colin.
Yeah, and you never know that. And people always say when these things happen, you know, if it happened to me, I'd grab a gun and I'd spray from the hip and then I'd shoot myself in the head and all this. And you don't do that. You just don't. You just have faith that you're going to get through it, you know, and certainly I did as well.
Yeah, it's down to belief, isn't it?
Yeah, and belief's a big thing. Belief's quite powerful. And if you believe something, and I know Sean buys into this a lot as well, that power of mental resilience is really powerful and can get you through some tough spots.
So do they give you a lot of training for the mindset and this mental training?
So I think selection already sort of gives you a pool of people that have a strong mental resilience. Coupled with that, you'll go through things like resistance to interrogation and stuff, which is a sort of play fight way of introducing you into what would happen if you were captured. Obviously, you know it's a training thing. You know you're never going to be killed, no matter how badly you're slapped around. The real thing's obviously very different, and you know the cavalry's not coming. You know that there's no rules, and they can kill you if that's their mindset. But you've got to give yourselves the best chance. You've got to put your mind in the best space, and whether you're a high-performance sports person or sports team or a business, your headspace has got to be in the right area so you can perform at 100%. And that's what separates the top sort of 1% from everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, very, very true. How about your career in television? What inspired the transition into TV, and how was your experience in that environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually not many people know, but I had a very early introduction to television back in the early 90s when Soldier was on. And they came to, a lot of people remember Soldier, but they came to Cyprus, and we were on exercise in Cyprus. And they said, we're looking for a couple of guys that, are not too shy to jump in front of the camera. So of course I was like, me. And so there I was. And I think in one of the episodes, I'm there with an LSW firing out a window, shouting at somebody. So that was my early sort of introduction to television. And I did a lot of sort of extra work while I was at university. I'd done sort of the History of Scotland series, Tagger, all the sort of things up here. And so that when this opportunity came along, it was one of those sort of SAS reality, take a group of people. And I was a bit sort of on the fence with it because I thought, how real are these things and how much is it manufactured for television? But the production company, Minnow Productions, that we spoke to, who were working for Channel 4, said, this is yours. You create it. All we'll do is put the cameras in there, change batteries, and you run it. And we're not trying to manipulate it. So from that side of the things, it was quite appealing. And of course, although it's called SAS Who Does Wins, I was the only SAS guy on there in the first series. They've got other people in now. The other guys were SBS. So I felt there was a bit of pressure there in terms of, you know, what it's trying to do. But certainly in an individual element, so things like the fan dance, we tried to replicate it as best we could. So similar wait time and distance. The problem is you're doing it in isolation over 8 days. And of course, selections over 6 months. So it's very hard to replicate.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I know it's had tremendous, you know, views, and you know, we've met. I was going to say, was you with Billy Binningham? Was you in the same forces with him?
Yeah, so he was originally B Squadron, but he came across to D Squadron and my troop, 19 Troop, Mountain Troop, for a while. And so, yeah, I know Billy really well. And it was actually me that put Billy in touch with Channel 4 and said, look, this is something that you might want to think about. And I think he mentions that in his book.
Yeah, we met Billy last year, didn't we?
Went to a show with Mark, and yeah, great guy, and yeah, really, really good. What's the best piece of advice, business or otherwise, that you've received in your career?
I think one of the and we sort of bear testament to this in the SAS, but one of the best things that whenever I hear the phrase, that's just the way we've always done it. Whenever I hear that, the hairs go up in the back of my neck, and I think, we could never have that mindset in Special Forces. That's just the way we've always done it. And people know our motto, SAS, Who Dares Wins, but very few people know our ethos. And our ethos is the continuing and unrelenting pursuit of excellence. You're always trying for perfection, but you'll never get there. But as long as you have that mindset to try and constantly improve and have this circular learning, so you're evolving properly. So all your learnings from all the things, whether you do them well or not, are all feeding back into that. And sometimes that can be as simple as having a debrief and making time for it and action in the debrief. And all those learnings keep evolving and feeding into them. So you're never reinventing the wheel. You're always going at things fresh. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give anyone.
Okay, and just one question I was going to ask you from us. What's been your biggest hurdle that you've overcome in your career?
Wow. Yeah, there's probably been a few. And I think for me, I think there's been a constant theme, even though people associate me with passing selection or being successful. I always think there's been a lot of times where it's been about facing rejection. And for every door that's opened, I've had 10 doors that have slammed in my face. So, and that's normal, that's life. And people are used to that. And certainly you speak to people like Richard Branson and people like that, they'll tell you exactly the same thing. And I'm not putting myself in the same boat, but for every successful person, they'll have had to overcome 100 hurdles in their way. And so for me, there have been several times, university is a good example. I applied to three colleges to get to university, and they all rejected me, and I had to go and find one that would accept me. And then 3 universities rejected me, and I had to find them. And then I spent in excess of a year applying for over 1,000 jobs without a single interview. And not a lot of people know that. And it was actually through a sort of volunteer role that I took on that I managed to find work. So life's full of rejection and failure. It's how you deal with it, how you learn from it, how you get up. And that makes you stronger in the long run. And although it sounds cheesy, you form these resilience force fields against stuff similar when it comes in the future.
Yeah.
And that's it, is learning from failure. And a lot of the greats all say that. when you learn from failure, that's when the resilience comes in, and it's a never give up attitude, as what most of them will say.
Yeah,
brilliant. I think we'll open up to the audience now. I think there's a few of you would like to ask him a question, so we're going to go over to Deb, our resident sexpert, first. She was the first one, so don't dread it, Colin.
You have a
Colin.
question, I think.
You're quite safe. I don't have any recollection of having met you in a club about 20 years ago. So if I did, I'll keep that one to myself, all right? But I've got a question for you, and it's kind of twofold. As Tracy said, I'm a residence expert and relationships coach, and my partner's a former Marine, so I know how grateful I am that he wasn't in the SAS. I'd like to ask, first of all, how has your career impacted on your personal relationships? And how have you built your relationships with the rest of your team in the SAS to progress through? Because I believe that has to have so much trust on it. How do you build those relationships?
Yeah, they're good questions. And I think they're sort of interlinked away, because trust in a relationships is a big thing. And for relationships to survive with any sort of long-lasting, deepen meaningfulness, that trust has got to be integrated within both parties. And I guess with an SAS team, that's the same. You can't instantly convey trust or have that investment of trust instantly. It's something that's earned, but you can certainly show signs of it through your initial meetings and how you're invested in this, you know. And one of the things I used to do with my teams early on was have one-to-one sort of interviews to say, look, you're a critical part, you're a medic, so you know you're going to be keeping us alive, and we're going to rely on you at times, and you know I just want you to know you've got our support, whatever you need to do, you're the expert in that. So that was part of it. But relationships are similar. Unfortunately, my first relationship didn't
Lost him. Can anyone else hear him?
It's good.
Yeah, you still hear
Sorry,
me?
you were freezing a bit then, Col.
Oh, yeah, it's because we talk about relationships. I do that, I freeze up. But no, I think that relationships are similar. I think one of the things that being in the Special Forces teaches you in a relationship is that at times it's going to be hard work, at times it's not always going to be good, but it's up to both of you to put the work in and invest time and emotion to make it work. And you have a sort of duty to do that. And you owe it to each other and your children if you have them. So I guess if you both realise that, you both have an invested stake in it, then it helps.
Great, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, Deb. Okay, David Davis, over to you if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, Colin. Fantastic talk, and I've seen quite a few episodes of SAS Who Does Wins, and it's an amazing program. When you're filming that, which do you find are the strongest, the men or the women? And do you find any surprises when some of the participants finish towards the end?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. And I think one of the things I've always had, and I guess if I didn't, I might answer this differently, was I've always been quite open-minded about that sort of side of things. And I think one of the things, just being in the military generally tells you that you can never judge somebody by looking at them. And sometimes the most strongest, resilient people, I mean, I talk about perspective, and that if anything, traveling around the world with the military, it gives you perspective because you see what people are willing to do. You know, you've got school kids that are willing to walk 10 miles to go to a school barefoot and hungry. And so if that's the issues they're dealing with, everything else sort of pales into comparison. So it does give you perspective. So I don't look at women or men any differently. They might have different physical or mental capacities, but being a man or a woman doesn't inherently automatically give you the right on any of those. And so I've been pleasantly surprised, if surprised the right word, to see both sides of that. Either men that look physically imposing but aren't as strong perhaps, whether that's mentally or not physically as strong as they look, and the opposite with women. And of course from last year we opened up SAS selection for women, and I would welcome that, I embrace it, because one of the things that sets our Special Forces apart is the fact that we recruit from RAF, Army, Navy, territorials and women, and no other Special Forces does that. So we want that, and we want as many different people that make up our special forces, because it gives us a greater flavour, as it would in the business sense. You want that in a business world. You don't want 10 of the same people. You want 10 very different people with different skill sets. So there's a lot of parallels.
Good.
Brilliant. Thanks for asking that, Dave.
Well done, Dave.
Tony Clarkston, do you want to ask the question? I know you've put it in the chat bar, but it'd be great for you to say the question to Colin. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Can you see me?
Yes. Hi, Tony.
Oh yeah, Colin, absolutely love the show. No, it was just a question about your habits. I was wondering what your habits are that actually support your current goals. So yeah, if you could answer that for me.
No.
Yeah, these questions are all really good. I was expecting much, I much prefer when they just say how many people you killed. It's a lot easier, but no. Habits. I heard an interesting thing about habits. Somebody said for habits, it takes you, now is it something like 7 weeks or something to create a habit? And I think that's weird, because as Sean will tell you, the first time you touch a hot GPMG barrel, you never touch it again. So some habits are instantaneous, you know, you get through them within seconds. But I guess healthy habits for me are, one of the things I do is I set, and I did this before COVID, but people have become more accustomed to it during COVID, is setting small, medium and long-term goals. And they could be daily, weekly, monthly, or you could make them weekly, monthly, yearly, depending on the size of them. And they're always good as a check-in. And one of the things, one of the third books I think I was going to come out with was a sort of calendar type book that every day it had a positive sort of slogan in it, but it also had a little reminder to check in with your goals, because the daily small goals seem quite easy. But once you put them together on a daily, routinely make them a habit, then medium goals become achievable. And once you do the same with medium goals, suddenly the year one becomes achievable. So these things that seem big and far off and unachievable suddenly become reachable. And anybody in project management will tell you that. You want to run a marathon, you want to lose weight. You start with these little goals and you pick them off, and suddenly the bigger ones become achievable. So I think those sort of things have been really useful for me, and I always check in with them. And I have a little bit on my phone, my notes, and it'll have my daily, it'll have my small, medium, long-term goals in. And so I check in from time to time just to see how I'm doing. But that's a useful thing for anything in life and business.
Brilliant. Thank you. Mike Armstrong, you've got a question.
Yes, hello, Colin. How are you doing? You okay?
You there, Mike?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Hi, Mike.
Right, Mike.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, mine was a practical question, really. You said you were at a siege for 4 days. My guess is during that time you don't sleep for that time. So if you was in a siege that was going on for longer than that, when at some point would you have to stop and someone else would come in?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends on the dynamics of the siege. So you'd be glad to know I did sleep at some stage. Nobody would want me coming at them with a gun after 4 days of no sleep. I'm not sure I'll be able to shoot straight, but in sleep, one of the things that you'll die of quicker before you die of hunger or thirst. So sleep's really important, especially if you have to be sharp and make these decisions at key times. And that's applicable in the business sense, because if you're not looking after yourself and your team and they slowly deplete over the course of a project, when you need to make key decisions at key times with limited data and information, you're not likely to be at 100%. So it's important that you look after yourself. So we have sort of enforced rest. So we have to make sure that if we're going out and stag, and I was a sniper on that job, we could only sort of do 4 hours at a time, because anything longer than that, you're going to have to think about things like eating, sleeping, going to the toilet, because those can all be distractions that might be the difference between split-second decision-making and not. So keeping yourself in the game and 100% fresh and alert is really important, and sleep's a big key part of that.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And one last question before we introduce Sean Molino. So Christine Nicholson, I think you have a question. Over to you, Christine, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all your insights. It's been really great to hear you. And I was brought up in Scotland, so I love the accent. So my question really is about this, going back to the SAS Who Does Wins, and there's lots of very interesting people come on that. The person who's had the biggest impact on me was Dan Cross. So who out of all the contestants has had the biggest impact on you, and why?
This will be a very strange one, because it might not be the obvious answer. So people always remember the winners, the people that made it the furthest and stuff like that. And, you know, everybody has their sort of role models. And for me, my role model was my granddad. But on the show, there was a guy on that from the sort of Leeds area, real troubled background. I could identify from how he was brought up, quite sort of impoverished, a lot of physical abuse going on within the family unit and stuff. And in terms of being a good soldier or whatever, it couldn't be further from the truth. He probably wouldn't have made it in the military. But his mindset, you couldn't tell him that he couldn't do something, because even if he was outgunned by two guys either side of him who were like Adonises, he would throw himself into it 100%. And not just because it was the right thing to do, but because he actually believed that he could beat them. And I think when you have a superpower like that, which mental resilience is, these days mental resilience is a superpower. When you have that, there's very little that you can achieve. And I think mental resilience will always trump any natural ability, any tactical ability, any physical traits you have. And you don't just see it within soldiers, you see it at sporting events. You know, it goes to a tiebreaker, it goes to a penalty shootout. It's nothing to do with how good you can strike a ball, how good you are at tennis. It's about mindset. Where is your headspace? Because if you have a better headspace than the other person, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come out the other side better. So that's always been something that really inspired me as well.
Brilliant. God, it's been amazing, hasn't it?
It's flown by the time.
I know. And we're gonna, you know, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. I could listen to you all night. It's been amazing. And, you know, you must have such resilience and such a determined mindset to have gone through what you've gone through. Is absolutely incredible, you know, and I commend you, because, you know, mass bravery, you know, to do what you've done. And, you know, I think it's phenomenal, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, thank you very much. And I'm now going to hand over to Sean Molino. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Sean. Sean served for 6 years with the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards. 4 of these were spent as a PTI. He completed a number of operations at home and abroad after leaving the army. He managed a number of health and leisure clubs in the Cardiff and Swansea area. Sean is a qualified sports therapist, advanced self-defense instructor, level 3 strength and conditioning coach, and holds a level 4 higher diploma in diet and nutrition. While serving in the army, he was a keen boxer, winning the IBB light heavyweight title. Upon leaving the army, he played rugby for Bracklet RFC, and he maintains a close relationship with the club to this day. He's also the founder of the Veteran Awards.
That's it.
So please, can you give a big warm welcome? I know you're all on mute, to Sean Molino. Good afternoon, Sean. How are we today? If you would like to unmute yourself.
That might help. First of all, I muted myself. How are we all? Living the dream.
Great to see you, and thank you for coming and sharing your time with us. And yeah, it's great to get to know you more, and I'm glad to see I'm in the hands of greatness with another Liverpool fan as well, which is good.
That's what we like.
So yeah, stick together. So yeah, thank you. Welcome, Sean. And can you tell us a bit about your incredible work that you do for the veterans, please?
Yeah, I mean, the Veterans Award. So the Veterans Award sort of came about to really inspire future service leavers that great things can happen. I think you only have to pick up the newspaper sometimes and get sucked into sort of a lot of negative press, you know, soldier prosecutions, could be PTSD issues, homeless issues, which are issues we need to be addressed. But also there's a lot of positive stories that come from that. And I think for those of you who follow me on social media who know me, I'm a massive believer in positivity breeding. Positivity is a strapline that I constantly like to use all the time. And again, like you, surrounding yourself with those positive people and like-minded people will lift you up on a positive journey. So we set up the awards basically, and it's all about really inspiring the future service leavers that great things can happen. We've got Business of the Year award from multi-million-pound, billion-pound turnover companies to people who are volunteering 20, 30 hours a week for sort of mental health charities. And the idea is to really showcase them and promote the positives that they're doing.
Excellent. And tell us well, the audience, that you also the MD of Forces Fitness as well, that you do.
So tell us a little bit about that, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, for all you, Tracy, you come on a boot camp, didn't you, many moons ago when you first started Introbiz, I think, wasn't it? It was like a year you started Introbiz.
With
Yeah, I can
Claire,
remember.
with Claire, it's a milestone, wasn't it?
That's right. So it was the first year when you started. So yeah, so we started off like most military personnel. I saw outdoor boot camps, beasting people in parks, running around parks, screaming and shouting, and you move. So that's how the business started. But like everything, we've evolved as the years have come along. We're more of a health and wellbeing consultancy now. So what we do, we work very closely with schools, colleges, universities on their health and wellbeing needs. We've worked with over 100 schools throughout Wales, tens of thousands of students. We work with businesses and just basically on improving general health and wellbeing. So we run residential weekends where people come away and have the full-on sort of army experience. You know, if your water bottle's not full, 20 burpees, run out to the posts and come back, through to the boot camps and employability boot camps that we run with local governments, which get people back into work. So those ones are a bit more low key. You know, we put our arms around the people, not literally because you can't do that anymore, but you know, take them in a little bit and just put our arms around them, give them some healthy tips on diet, nutrition, goal setting. And ultimately it's very similar to what Colin said earlier and what you guys will say, setting those goals, getting people to understand to set those goals and understand sometimes that you might fail. You know, we might fall down. I've fallen down so many times in the past, physically, so many times every year. But what I see now is failure for me is literally, I know it might sound weird, but it's sort of a good thing. It proves I'm trying to do new things, and sometimes it might work. Sometimes I'll go a different direction. Sometimes I might try it again. But you know what? At least I tried it. And out of those 5-6 things I try every new year, 2 of them might be amazing, massively great things. And similar to me, I didn't know that the Veterans Awards itself was going to be what it turned out to be, and it's actually really exploded. We've had the buy-in off the military. It's a not-for-profit organisation, so our board they're not paid. You know, the board ain't paid. They're volunteer board, and it's doing the right things for the right reasons. And I'm very thankful for people who help and support that. And Colin, obviously, he's a big supporter of the Veterans Awards, and you know, he's really helped with that as well, which I'm very thankful for. I think Pete Davis is on as well somewhere. I know that he's a big supporter of the Veterans Awards too.
Yeah, well, you'll have to speak to us and get us involved in it, because we're always happy to help and support charities.
And we love supporting the ABF Soldiers Charity for many years now at the after parties from our expos, and raised thousands for them. And you know, we commend the guys involved in that, and we get all the members who support it as well. So, and Pete does a fantastic job. I know Pete's online today, so yeah, commend you guys. You know, fantastic. And just listen to yourself, Sean, and also Colin. We talk about business, and we talk about relationships and trust. How important do you think networking has been in your careers?
From my side, networking is massively key. It is massively key. And again, I think it's safe to say, and surround yourself with like-minded, positive people is key for me. But we don't necessarily always need cheerleaders. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, for instance, the board, when I selected the board, and I selected the board for the Veterans Awards, and they're very different, completely different. Each person on the board is different. I've got 2 civilians, 1 lady, 1 man, and another veteran. So one is completely probably very far left if we look at political spectrum, and the other one is not far right, but he's a conservative. So, but I like to think that we've got people of very different spectrums politically, but people who will challenge me from different points of view. And I wanted it to be diverse. I wanted to make sure that I had a lady on the board and a gentleman on the board. I wanted it to be mixed because, again, like Colin said earlier on, with people being opened up for selection now for ladies coming on board, I think that as a great thing, an absolute great thing, as long as the standards weren't lowered. And it brings something different to the party. But networking, 100%. I mean, that's got me where I am. If I hadn't have networked and been a good, decent person, delivered on time, you know, I wouldn't be meeting these great people who want to do business, but not necessarily just business, because obviously my not-for-profit, I don't see it as a business. I see it as a community for promoting things from our military community.
Yeah, and I think that's massive. And I was chuckling earlier on because I remember when we first did the walk up Pen y Fan, and we had to do the army training, as I called it, and I was like, oh my God, I remember doing the planks and running down the hill and running up the hill and doing those great big tires that you had to flip over. And I was like, oh my God, they think we're in the bloody army, you know? And I was like, oh, but I'm a princess. I don't need to be doing this, you know? But no, it was good fun. It was blooming hard work. And, but I do remember it, with really good memories, you know? But I think when you're in the army, you're in the forces, you've got to have huge dedication and, you know, and commitment, haven't you? You know, how have you found that with, you know, transferring those skills to your business?
I think that the transferable skills you have from the military. So when you leave the military, I think from my side, the attribution, the skills that we get, we're not the finished article, but when we leave, we're very good at operational management. We're very good at timekeeping. We'll turn up on time, we'll do the job, and we'll get it done, because we do it. That's what we do in the army. You go out there, you get it, you smash it. There are elements we need to build on, and don't get me wrong. So I didn't know much about profit and loss, bottom line, sales and marketing. So they're all skills that are sort of added to my sort of framework. If you think the army give me my building blocks, and then I've sort of built my house with the fluffy things I'm adding on. But again, earlier on, like you said, Colin said, we're always learning, aren't we? I'm learning now. I'll learn today, probably from some of the questions later on. I learned from you when I talked to you earlier on the phone call. We're always learning. And as long as you can absorb things like a sponge and take those good bits of it and add it to you and your business perspective and your goals, you'll always move forward. And that's things that I've taken from there. So from my time, I'm very, very thankful. And I say this all the time. I never forget where I come from. And the military has given me so many skills. And that's why through Forces Fitness, we sponsor a couple of the Welsh Guards boxing team events, because I used to box for them. So it's nice to give. Again, giving back is hugely key as well. And I'll always give people help and advice, whether they're from the military community or not, just in general. If someone's got a question, whether it's a risk assessment, setting things up, different bits of bobs, like I said, my door's always open. Always open to help and support people, because it comes around as well, doesn't it? It'll come around to me when I need help.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, we all don't know everything, and this is why we've got to then tap into people who do know how to do. And that's one of the questions we asked Richard Branson when we went to NECA last year. We asked him that question: what has been the secret of your success? And he turned around and said, I found people who were better than me doing jobs that I couldn't do. And that's so important. And I think with networking, you have those people around you. You secure good people around you who are positive, who want to lift you up, that want to help and support you along the way, and you won't go far wrong. Do you agree with that?
100%, exactly. That is what you said. I've got nothing else to say apart from that. That's perfect.
Yeah, cool. I think Sue Worrell from the Health Hub Academy would like to ask a question. She's messaged me saying, can I ask Sean a question? So if we can open it up to Sue. Sue, if you'd like to unmute yourself, that'd be fabulous. Thank you.
Sean, nice to see you.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, you are an amazing trainer, and I love the tyres running up an Aberavon front with that hill thing. It was amazing. Hated it at the time, but loved it really. Sean, you've done so much, and you've done fantastic transitions every time. You had Forces Fitness, now you've revamped that. You've got the awards. What has been your biggest challenge going through all this from the leaving the forces until where you are now?
I think my biggest challenge for me was probably at the point where I was working for it's really weird, because I was working for a corporate company. I was earning maybe 50, 60 grand a year, the fully expensed Audi every year. And some people might think I was living the dream, and some people think it's mad for what I'd done. But I was going into work and I was putting a brave face on. You know, the brave face you put on, and there was loads of staff. It was it was the biggest grocers in the world, biggest in Europe, sorry, second biggest in the world. But I was going into work, just putting that brave face on. I'd always smile anyway. Those who know me, you wouldn't know, because I'd be smiling and I'd be like, hey, how's it going? And Mr. Positive. But inside, I was saying to the wife, and when I was home, I wasn't happy. But one day something happened. I think it was when I went for selection, actually with 2-1, I come off the back of that, come off on the last day, and I didn't pass. And I thought, I've got to make some changes in my life. I've got to make some changes. After a week, I was back in work, and I handed my notice in. So at that point, when I made the decision to go full-time Forces Fitness, if you want to call it, and give up my security of my job and my car and everything, I told my wife, and my wife was very, very supportive, thankfully. She did actually say, Sean, look, I understand, because we've talked about it, and I wasn't feeling right. And she said, it's for your own sort of mental health, and I know you're going to do well. And she was there on my side, backing me, which is, again, another thing, having that good family unit at home helping and supporting you. And that's how Forces Fitness really sort of went to the next level for me. But also off the back of it, I had the time to invest in the Veterans Awards. So I went full-time Forces Fitness, the time to spend on something I love and enjoy, which is the Veterans Awards. And I left the role, yes, a lot of money, yes, a car, and a lot of security and great pension. But now I'm doing something I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy. I get to spend more time with my family. I'm working from home. I don't have to really leave the house that much. I've got a great team working for me who are brilliant. And I just feel so much better about myself for making that call. But it was a big call to make. And, sometimes they don't go right, sometimes they do. But I thought, I'm just going to go for it, chuck my all in, and thankfully, touch wood, so far it's going well.
Oh, amazing.
Amazing, brilliant. Yeah, and that you've got mental tenacity. That's why you've come through without PTSD and everything else. And I think Dan Stanley would like to have a word with you, because what you're saying will ring true with him, won't it, Dan?
Thanks, Sue.
Over to you, Dan.
Dan Stanley there. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, not so much a question, but just more of an introduction to Sean. I think that we've probably got quite a few mutual connections, and I'd be really interested to have a chat with you maybe in the next couple of weeks. I've got a business that centers around helping professional men, I suppose, regain a sense of balance in their life, not just being so career orientated, but align that with their own success and fulfillment. But on the back of that, I've got a men's walking group called Men and Mountains. There's no commercial aspect to it whatsoever. And what I'd like to do, I suppose, is to understand how you have, I suppose, taken the Veterans Awards to the level that you have. And, you know, if we could have a conversation based on that, that'd be really useful for me.
Yeah, no, of course. Listen, and again, anyone online today, I've always said my door's always open to anyone. You know, I've got no problems helping and supporting. If you want to have a coffee, a Zoom chat, and we can definitely, please link in with me afterwards. I'll put my my email address on the group chat now, like Paul and Tracy said earlier. And if you've got an email and you want to have a chat, I'm more than happy to do that. And that's something I've helped since the COVID lockdown and the crisis and people trying to get back from the fitness industry. I qualified health and safety when I left the military, part of my resettlement. So I've just been talking through risk assessments, how to write risk assessments correctly in relation to the new guidelines from Welsh Gov due to COVID at the moment and how they can operate outdoors safely. So I'm more than happy to help with anything. And even if I've got contacts and places, and 100%, no problem at all, of course.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'll drop you a message this week.
Brilliant, no problem at all. Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat after I finish talking, mate.
Thank you.
Maybe there's a joint venture that's coming up, you know, with you two. Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows? I'm all for forging new relationships.
I love planting seeds with people.
Opportunities are everywhere.
And I think, you know, Sue as well, Sue Worrell, you know, if you could speak to, you know, maybe Colin and Sean as well, because obviously Sue's got the Health Hub Academy. They are going to be doing the networking now in a couple of minutes. So it would be amazing. I know Sean's going to stay on. If you'd like to stay on as well, Colin, that would be awesome. I appreciate if you're busy. And if you can't, you know, we totally understand, but you're more than welcome to stay on. It's been absolutely amazing, isn't it? Do you want to say a few words?
So listen, first of all, can we give Sean and Colin a big round of applause, please?
Hang on, let me just get the screen. I want to see everybody clapping. Come on, yay! Fabulous. They were absolutely awesome.
And we could do another hour talking to these guys easily, but we're on a schedule. But